Please excuse me. Husband follow-up, the first time these talks started coming when in early 90s, when the same scores for fecal incontinence that were used for erectile malformation were started being used for husband disease. And so we can see the slide, ring split, Holzschneider, Kelly clinical scores. I mean, these we have been using for ARM patients, but now they were also being used for Hirschsprung patients. And then we started talking about the mental health and psychological function of adolescents with Hirschsprung disease. We saw that these problems just don't go away, and many of patients, even in adolescent adulthood, would have problems. And then the paper started coming on that, and then they also mentioned about, this paper mentioned about parental criticism and talked about why parental counseling should be done so that they should be a little more sympathetic to these children who have really no control on their fecal continence. This is a landmark paper by Yanchar and Saucy from Ottawa, published in 1999, still quoted many a times, which talks about constipation score and fecal continence score. They started talking about how social life and family life gets affected because of Hirschsprung. I mean, we are only talking about patients who have been already operated for Hirschsprung disease, and they realize that long-term follow-up is very, very important, and hand-holding of children as well as the parents need to be done. This is again a very widely quoted paper by Bai et al. From China, published in 2002, and this talks about clinical bowel function scoring system, which is very, very important. And this is the scoring system that can be used in most of the low-income and middle-income countries when we talk about this following them up in our OPDs. They also said that the long-term regular follow-up of operated patients with Hirschsprung disease is indispensable. This is a very, very important article. If somebody who's interested in this topic, this article was published in 2004 in Seminars of Pediatric Surgery. It's a very, very detailed article which talks about every entity, every definition. Please go through it. Now, this article, which was published a little later, it talks about that although the children may have problems, but by the time they are aged 15, majority of them have excellent results. So we must at least take care of these patients till 15 years of age. This is an article from Japan. They use a little different kind of thing. Nobody else in the world uses evacuation scores. But here also, something is coming out very prominently, which is there in all other articles, is that about 20% of the patients operated for Hirschsprung disease will go on having either constipation or incontinence and would have some social issues and some problems with their quality of life. This is an article published in 2015 where for the first time somebody was talking about endosonography and bowel function. So they will do anal endosonography and find out if there are defects in the internal and sphincter. And then they will tell you whether this can be repaired or whether this patient will be redo or whatnot. This is another good paper which is published, and on the left side, this is quality of life scores. I will go through the next 2-3 slides and you will see there are multiple quality of life scores and multiple questionnaires which are probably cannot be very well applied in our circumstances where the literacy rates are low and also we have a lot of overcrowding, etc. But this particular quality of life score shown as table 1 on the left side has some dimensions that are mentioned. Which include fecal continence, school absenteeism, unhappiness or anxiety, food restriction, and peer rejection. These are the issues that talk about the parents' health on these issues, and also the children themselves talk about these issues for us to know how much counseling and psychological help these parents and patients would need. This is another good article from Australia which talks about that 55% of patients will report no accidents per week, but as many as 1/3 of patients will have 1 to 5 accidents per week, which could be passing inadvertently good amount of stool in their underpants, and 12% of patients will have 6 or more accidents every week. So they are having accidents almost every day. So don't just do the surgery and let them go. These patients need to be followed up so as to know that they may have problem. Now this another article from 2018, mine's very popular article. It talks about WHO quality of life scores and CHQ CF87 score. These scores have been used very commonly nowadays in Western countries, but probably they cannot be very easy. There are so many questions and very difficult, even if they use Likert scales, to use these in our setups. So the persistent identification problems is an indication that continuous care is necessary in this paper. This line is important and must be remembered forever. This is again, we have already talked about this bowel function score. This is another scoring system which must be learned and used. Anything which is more than 17, these are different numbers are given, and if you would see there are 6 columns, 6 dimensions, with the maximum points of 3. So anything more than 17 is alright, less than 15 definitely is incontinence which needs some surgery. Another paper which talks about long-term follow-up by a multidisciplinary team, including pediatric surgeons, gastroenterologists, dietitians, as well as psychologists. And they say that if pediatric surgeons stop seeing the patients at the age of 12, 14, 18, then there must be a system so as to pass on these patients to adult team, because few adults will still continue to have these fecal incontinence problems. Now there is another paper. Majority of the papers say that by the age of 15 years the patients will improve, but this paper from the United Kingdom, published only last year, says it may not improve with age. So quality of life has to be taken care of. This is a systematic review and a meta-analysis which talks about targeted and evidence-based follow-up procedures and transitional care are essential to meet the patient's long-term care. So there also they are talking about the transitional care and how we pediatric surgeons should pass on this patient to the adult surgeons and adult gastroenterologists who should take care of these patients. This is a paper which has been published only 4 days back, and it is from India, the very first paper from India in this topic, from CMC Vellore. And they find that overall quality of life may not kind of have problems, but again the same thing, about 21% or 1/5 of the patients will keep on having difficulties. This is a paper which is accepted but yet not published. This is also from UK, and it talks about a large cohort, and they talk about that fecal swallowing and fecal awareness improves with age. And they also talked about doing quality of life scores for these patients. So as far as the literature goes, I would suggest if you could just learn bowel function scores and quality of life for those 6 dimensions that I talked about, that is good enough for our low income and middle income countries. And these are the only guidelines I could find in the entire literature which says how often you should follow up these patients. You know, we have been seeing these patients yearly, and here also they have recommended that follow-up should be more frequent during first year of life, but regular contact should be maintained 1 to 2 years thereafter. So if you cannot ask the patient to come over, some of my patients come all the way from Bangladesh to Delhi. If they cannot come, please let them be heard on the telephone and ask them structured questions so as to know what help this patient would need. Now this is a algorithm that I have made. So obstructive symptoms, we all know about constipation, abdominal distension, recurrent enterocolitis, and failure to thrive, or they may have fecal incontinence. In this slide, we'll talk about the obstructive symptoms and what to do about it. So most important thing is to do a examination under anesthesia, rectal. These are patients, they may have normal findings or they may have abnormal findings. If abnormal findings are there, the anal stricture is there, the dilation has to be done. If it resolves, fine. If it persists, then we may have to think of redo pull-through, and before that we will need to do a pre-op optimization by irrigation, etc. for redo pull-through. Or they may have a Suave's cuff. If people have done a lot many Suaves, whether abdominally, transdermally, and if you've done PRs, you will be able to feel a circumferential cuff, which may or may not be tight. If it's tight, then Suave's cuff is the problem. Those who do a Duhamel and do not have staplers and do not do Martin's modification of Duhamel, they will leave a Duhamel spur which can be felt parectally, which could be a problem. Transition zone pull-through could be done. You know, the problem is if you would read recent literature, ganglion cells may be present in one part we were talking about doing a donut biopsy. Donut biopsy at the time of surgery. It is very possible that in one circumference or one part of the circumference the ganglion cell will be there, and another 2/3 part of the circumference ganglion cell may not be there. So don't base your level of aganglionosis just by just sending one little biopsy and then results will be bad, because transition zone may be different at different parts of the circumference at the same point of bowel. High anastomosis, that means you have done anastomosis say 2 centimeters above the dentate line, that could be a problem, again we need redo. Normal finding, if they are normal finding, then please do rectal section biopsy. If you don't have rectal section biopsy, you can do even full thickness biopsy. That would show either the patient has got Hirschsprung disease or it may have intestinal neural dysplasia. You all know intestinal neural dysplasia does not have good results. Or it may be normal. So if it is normal, then we must do a contrast anema. Contrast anema may actually pick up something which you may have missed on EUA, which may be duodenal spurt or slip pull through with dilated distal segment and large dysfunctional duodenal pouch. But if there is age-specific dilatation, then one can do anal dilatation or Botox of anal canal. Botox is all the more indicated if everything goes normal and the child is less than 1 to 2 years of age and still having severe constipation. These patients can also be given isosorbide. So after this Botox, it may resolve or it may persist. If it is persist, do a full thickness biopsy. If it is Hirschsprung disease, again do a redo pull through. But suppose in full thickness biopsy also everything has been excluded, still everything is normal, then what do? Then you will have to put this patient on bowel management program. Bowel management program, as we all know, is more so being used for fecal incontinence, soiling. If the patient comes not with constipation but fecal incontinence and soiling, then you have to do EUA and examination of dentate line. Dentate line is for proprioceptors and the sphincters for the sphincteric mechanism there. So if there is normal dentate line, normal sphincters, and it is a case of, let's say, some constipation with overflow pseudo incontinence, then you will have to put bowel management program again. But if there is damaged dentate line or damaged sphincters, or if it is a case of hypermotile colon, that means it is a non-retentive fecal incontinence, then also you will have to probably go for bowel management program. If bowel management program also fails, then we have to do colonic manometry, which is not available everywhere. We have anal manometry now available in many departments, but not colonic manometry. And then the patient may have colonic inertia, etc., and then directed therapy has to be given. At times one needs to also resort to anorectal manometry and at times biofeed mechanism also. And these are the different salvage procedures. If nothing works, then what do you have to do? If the sphincter has been damaged, you can do sphincteroplasty. Radiofrequency used to be done earlier, not now. Gracilis sling could be tried. Artificial sphincters have been described abroad. Sacral nervous stimulation, something similar to bladder management have been involved. But at times, nothing would work or nothing is available, then you need to give this patient a permanent colostomy. To have an abdominal stoma is much better than to have a perineal stoma. It's much easier to manage an abdominal stoma rather than managing a perineal stoma. Now, what is the bowel management that we're talking about? We are talking about whether there's an indication of redo surgery. Those patients are separate, but if there's no indication, then you have to see the prognosis for fecal incontinence. If they're intact dentate line sphincters, then you can give a laxative trial and you can give water-soluble fiber, Senna. I'm sure many people from Pakistan must have also had it. Senna tablets, pectin powder, they're more frequently taken in Westerners. But Isabgol is very popular in India. Poor damaged dentate line sphincters, these patients probably will be just either you will try a redo surgery or a salvage surgery. If nothing can work, then you have to put these patients on retrograde and antigrade enemas. A saline, glycerin, soap, and so kind of enemas are mentioned. And also, if this patient also has a hypermotile colon along, then you should give locamide or lomotil tablets to these patients. Constipating diet, yeah, we all know about constipating diet, etc. But this is something which is being practiced in, say, USA. So they have a very graded and a very very structured way how to go stepwise up. First they give loperamide, then they give hemosmin, paracetamol, lometer. These are when the patient is having hypermotile colon and also having a lot of diarrhea. And these are the things that can be mentioned for perennial skin care. We all, as we use zinc paste and so many other things that we have been, even meat broth used to be used at least around the abdominal stomas. But abroad now they use this cyanoacrylate and these two machines which are depicted there, 3M Cavalion Advanced and Magnine Marathon. They are supposed to be very good. And we all know about constipating low sugar diet, what to eat and what to avoid. So if the patient is having diarrhea, then they will be asked to take those things which will probably cause constipation, which includes white bread, a lot of vegetables and pasta and etc. are mentioned here. Whereas you have to avoid berries and sodas and sugary drinks and all that. And whole grain breads, because whole grain bread is supposed to cause motility. Now, a few case studies before I move. So, this is a 2-year-old boy with Down syndrome and Hirschsprung disease present to our OPD. Was diagnosed in neonatal period to have Hirschsprung disease. Ileostomy leveling biopsies were done, transitions in adiabatic picture. So, I can't be reading every line. So, if you would see this contrast enema that is done, you will see a long stricture. This long stricture has been done because of ischemia and pull-through bowel. Secondly, to the original division of the middle colic vessels. So, redo ileostomy has to be done, and then once ileostomy is shaped, then one could do a redo pull-through. But fear of hypermotile colon and fecal incontinence still stays. So, even after redo surgery, if he has problem, we will go on to bowel management. This is the case 2, which shows that the transrenal pull-through has been done, but the patient has been having episodes of Hirschsprung-related atrocolitis. On PR, one could feel the rubbery ring of the suave cuff, but X-rays showed a lot of stools, so it's a retentive constipation. Suave cuff was removed and redo Swenson pull-through was done. But even after that, he had some enterocolitis episodes. Then we injected the Botox injection into the external sphincter and the patient improved, and after 3 years. And these Botox injections, if you have to give, then you have to repeat them every 3 to 4 months. This is a case where this patient had a large duodenal pouch and also some spur. There were 2 options: either you just excise the spur and forget about reshaping the pouch, but we removed the pouch and converted it into ileoanal pull-through. 5-year-old boy had previous pull-through, presented with constipation. He had recurrent episodes of abdominal distension and only 3 episodes of post-op enterocolitis. Botox anal canal was done but was unsuccessful. Contrast enema was normal, no evidence of suave cough, EUA lost dentate line, repeat rectal biopsy were done. Ganglion cells were present, but hypertrophic nerve fibers of 70 microns were seen. You see, we did not find anything wrong other than this hypertrophic nerve fibers. See, anything less than 40 microns is fine, but if there are 70 micron hypertrophic nerve fibers is there, then probably we have gone through an area which still has the transition zone. So this patient also needed a redo. Fecal incontinence issues could still be there because the dentate line has been damaged by the surgeon before, and that needs to be then taken care of, either those bowel management program, irrigations, enemas, or salvage procedures. The previous slide, I could talk about even maze procedure. We have done a lot of maze procedures for intractable constipation in our patients of ARM as well as Hirschsprung disease. Case 5 that shows a very dilated colon and PR showed a very tight anal stricture, and so we needed to do a redo pull-through for this anastomotic stricture. This is a patient where, as you would see, this patient has had Down syndrome and pull-through in neonatal age. And this patient was having a down distension episode of fecal incontinence, had 1 episode of enterocolitis. We thought that maybe he had retained suave cough or anastomotic stricture. So we got an X-ray done, and in the lateral X-ray we could see that there was widening of presacral space, which is suggestive of obstructed suave cough. So rectal biopsy was done, and rectal biopsy showed no ganglion cells and no hypertrophied nerve fibers either. So this patient had rectal irrigations ready to go through with temporary defunctioning ileostomy and procedure. Fear is that he may still need additional bowel management treatment. This is a patient again where there is a large dysfunctional abdominal pouch which was excised and the procedure was done. Again, this is a patient where in the initial procedure there has been a little leak, and that is why there is a lot of fibrosis that has happened around the suave cuff which has been tight. So this patient also needed a redo procedure and a maze procedure. So usually some kind of defunctional ileostomy or a maze procedure is always done in such patients so that the healing could happen well. Mind that redo surgery is one of the most important factors that decide the constipation. If a patient has had redo surgery, this fecal incontinence chances are much more than if the things had gone right the very first time. The only other factor that has been noted in literature for worse results is when the patient has got total colonic ganglionosis. Otherwise, what age has they been operated? Less than 4 months, less than 6 months, more than 4 months, more than 6 months, doesn't matter. How senior has been the surgeon, how experienced the surgeon, does not matter. So these two things matter a lot. One is the extent of aganglionosis, and other is whether this patient needed a redo procedure. This is the last thing which I am showing again. As you see, there is a long anastomotic stricture. So this patient would need it again. And this patient had also had a posterior long meiotomy. You know, I also in my initial days would do, thinking that it's a short segment husband disease, a long kind of meiotomy posteriorly. But there's a lot of issues with it. And now more and more surgeons from abroad, they have stopped doing that because abscess forms and a lot of stricturing occurs in that area. With then operating, it becomes very difficult to pull through. So this patient would eventually need a PCRP, root surgery, and then only we will be able to operate and do a redo. So carry-on messages are normal, continuous and regular bowel opening, the primary goal of the surgery. Functional outcomes are achieved by competent surgeons in only 4 out of 5 patients. Outcomes are not dependent on the patient's gender or age at surgery, length of aganglionosis or type of surgery. Long-term yearly follow-up of multidisciplinary approaches is valid in all patients till at least 15 to 18 years of age. Functional outcomes improve in adulthood for most. Constipation and fecal incontinence are common, thus the latter affecting the quality of life more. Enterocolitis is the most distressing and dangerous sequel. There are many cross-sectional studies available on this issue, but they have mainly originated from high-income countries. Scanty literature is available from low and middle-income countries. Longitudinal prospective studies of the same set of patients are not available, and this is what we can do in Pakistan and India. Follow up our patients for 20 years and say 20 years down the lane how how our patients have been behaving. And many different constipation and fecal incontinence scoring are available, but quality of life questionnaires are available. But bowel function scores is the most adaptable scoring system for our setups, and we should use that. And less than 17 out of 20 scores on this bowel function score is the red flag for investigation. And individualized targeted management, which varies from redo surgery and dietary changes, and the use of Botox injections to bowel management programs. And I've very extensively used these two references, so I must acknowledge them. One is this paper, there are a lot of papers by P. Pareto, by the way, and there is a beautiful book which is written by Lev Tavay and all that. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yogesh. You are absolutely right that there is almost similar scenario in Pakistan as well. That long-term follow-up is lacking, and we need to follow our patient for bowel scoring, bowel control scoring system. We can devise our own system, and we need to follow him for the quality of life, and long-term monitoring and follow-up is important. It may need redo surgery. Thank you very much. Any question from Dr. Yogesh?
I'm waiting for the question.
Yeah, it's coming.
A very nice presentation. My question is, you have talked about the toilet biopsy. when you recommend the donor biopsy in every case or in selected cases? And second question is, you talked about the redo surgery. My question is, what time interval you give to the patient for the redo surgery? Because it's very difficult to do a redo Duhamel or Suave.
Okay. So the first question is about donut. Yes, donut biopsy should be done in every patient. And the entire circumference of donut ideally should have ganglion cells. Ideally, those centers who are doing such surgeries for Hirschsprung disease should have facility of frozen section. There was a beautiful picture, I forgot to put it in my slide, where they show that radiologically and even intraoperatively what you see as the transition zone, the ganglion cells may not be present even towards the most proximal part of the transition zone. So a donut biopsy is very important, frozen section is very important. Now coming to the question of redo pull-through. As I said very well that redo pull-through is one of the factors which is determinant of later fecal incontinence also. This is one of the most important determinant of fecal incontinence. So we shall avoid doing redo pull-through as far as possible, and that is why I had shown that algorithm. A lot of conservative measurements, bowel management, etc. has to be done. But if a patient fails in everything that is there in the armamentarium, then this patient will do a redo pull-through. Now, what is the problem with Pakistanis and Indians and so many other such as similar developing countries is that if we get a patient who deserves to have a redo pull-through, our ego would avoid us to send to a man who has got experience of doing redo pull-through in 50 patients. You know, there are conditions where we need to centralize redo pull-through, excess trophy bladder closures. These are the kind of surgeries which not everybody in every clinic, in every center should be doing it. If you are interested in your patient and their long-term outcomes, then probably say 1 or 2 centers or 4 centers in Pakistan should learn the expertise of doing redo pull-throughs, and all such patients should be sent to them. Towards the last slide, case study number 9, I had also mentioned that posterior surgical route that we use for ARM can also be used for difficult patients, for difficult redo surgeries, because with the previous surgeries, a lot of fibrosis is already happening in that area. So you probably will not get a plane, whether you try above or below, or whether you try laparoscopically or robotic. No, so what I am saying is redo surgery is the last resort. Even before that, if you think that the patient could have spectroplasty or even gracilis sling, if you are good at it, do it. But I remember attending the Bahawalpur conference where an Indian surgeon said that gracilis sling is a very, very nice surgery, and somebody with a very large experience from Pakistan said, and I agreed with him, that gracilis sling does not give results. So whatever your expertise is, do only that. Whatever is there on my slides is just that all this is available. But whatever we can do, we should do. But bowel management program should be instituted in every patient who has got constipation and fecal incontinence. You can again, just like we were talking about DSD clinic, for AR patients and for Hirschsprung patients, you can have a clinic like that where bowel management program can be given. Thank you so much.